We have a flag. Anyone wishing to do so can join Tim Wiles in leading the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You. And looks like we now also have Barbara. So let's jump right in. First order of business, we have a couple of resignations from the last meeting to accept. So is there a motion to accept the resignation of Mark Keeling? Kathy makes the motion. Is there a second? Noreen. So for just the sake of ease in a meeting, we'll do a roll call. Barbara? Barbara?
I would like to not accept his resignation, even though I know it's futile. He was a valuable board member.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I went into a vote too early. Is there discussion, I guess? Because we shouldn't discuss our votes in a vote, but we should allow discussion. And Barbara, if you'd like to give the reason why you'll be voting no, please do so. Barbara?
What was that, Kate?
I've lost Barbara. So I jumped right into a vote, not anticipating anyone to not approve the resignations. But if you'd like to have discussion, that is the place to do so, and then we'll have a vote when we're all set with the discussion. So you'd like to discuss your reason for voting no, not to accept his resignation.
Well, there's no need for discussion. It's just that he was a very valuable member of the board, and I'm sad to see him go. So I don't want to accept his resignation.
All right. Is there other discussion? Okay, we will go to a vote. We'll do a roll call. Barbara? You are against?
Against.
Accepting? Against? Phil?
Yes.
In favor? Peter?
Opposed?
Peter is opposed. Marcia?
Aye.
Kathy?
Yes.
Herb?
I can't vote yet. I haven't been sworn in.
Oh, that's right. Apologies. Deepest apologies. Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Caitlin, yes. So 6-2, the motion passes at 6:07.
Doesn't Peter vote?
Peter voted. He voted against.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
So is there a motion to accept the resignation of Brian Best? Kathy, second by Phil. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Barbara?
No.
Phil?
Yes.
Peter,
Okay.
Opposed.
Marcia,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Noreen,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes, and if I could be recognized after the vote, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Myself, yes. So 6-2 in favor. The resolution to accept the resignation of Brian Bass passes at 6:09. Recognize Richard.
This may be more informational, but I don't know if we've got a precedent about doing something to thank them and acknowledge their service in terms of certificate or something else. If it requires a motion to do that, I'd be happy to make one.
That's what I wanted.
I'm sorry.
Barbara has to be muted. I don't know if you can do it, Caitlin.
I cannot. Barbara, if you wouldn't mind just muting. I don't think a resolution has to be made for that, Richard. But we will be sure to do so, and I encourage other board members to reach out to them individually as well. Jason's joined the meeting, I think, at 6:09. So now we have the oath of office for Herb Hennings.
Can I speak again, please, for a second?
Absolutely, Peter.
I'll say the same thing that I said last time about Phil. Both are great guys who have served on this board, and I completely support them. And there is no doubt that I will obviously vote in support of Herb Hennings today. That being said, it was unfortunate that I was able to miss the meeting that happened on Monday, where I know things were discussed about how to fill those vacancies. Again, I just like to state that I think it's out of precedent what we're doing. I actually had stopped in to the library and spoke with Tim about my concern for this, which I don't know if he shared with any of you. And he had kind of pointed out to me that a portion of the bylaws that you guys were looking at to determine this stuff in the policy committee related to the terms of office. And I don't know if it was a misunderstanding of what it says there, but on the bottom it says in the event, it says term of office, it's under C, in the event of an incomplete term, the newly elected trustee, having received the least number of winning votes, shall fill the remainder of the vacant 5-year term. My understanding of that specific bylaw is related to if we are having a general election and there are 2 full 5-year terms and 1 partial term, as I believe Phil actually experienced in the previous election. When the votes come in, it goes from the most votes to the least votes. The 2 highest vote getters would get the 5-year term. The remaining person would serve the remainder of the term from the person who has left. At no point in time have we ever had the decision been made by the president of the board to choose who was going to go on, nor have we ever had the person in the situation of Barry Nelson, who made the recommendation for Herb in the previous meeting. That's never happened before. And I'm still very concerned that we are not going through the process of sending it to the nominating committee. And if my services can be used in the policy committee to help translate what might be there, I would gladly do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So to clarify, you are correct. That is in terms of a general election when there is a partial term available. Further down in the bylaws, it does state the board will appoint to a vacancy for until the next general election. And a meeting was had and a discussion was had, a majority vote of the board was taken, and the board did so choose to appoint Herb Hennings.
With all due respect, I just want to say this. And I know we're trying to get to a situation where we have calmer meetings, and I definitely think it's important to do that for the rest of the board. And that's why I recommended the board meeting, which I'll introduce emails later in the meeting in regards to that board meeting. But I don't understand, in the almost 9 years that I've been on the board, we've had a variety of people serve in the role of president, and we have never, ever had this issue before. And for some reason, we have to change everything up. There's a lot of frustration on my part, We've changed up the ability for board members to be able to communicate through email. We can no longer do that. People want to have discussions, they get cut off in the middle of it. We go ahead and no longer use the nominating committee. You might as well just disband the nominating committee, and we'll leave it all up to the president to make the decision for every appointment, every spot that's going to be filled from this point forward. If that's the policy that we're going to go with, let's do it.
Thank you, Peter. Herb, if we'd like to continue through the agenda to your oath of office, would you like to do a call and repeat, or do you have the oath in front of you to read?
I do not have it in front of me.
All right, I will go ahead and read, and you can repeat after me. I do solemnly affirm
I do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of library trustee
of library trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you so much, Herb. Welcome back to the board.
Oh, thank you.
Is there, Luann, is there public input?
Hi, everybody. I don't have any public input at this point.
Thank you very much. So moving on to agenda item E, construction update with BRMA and Turner. Megan, take it away.
Thank you. I am representing the whole team this evening. Both Pete and Kirk from Turner are not available. They might jump in later, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to just do our quick update. So, as we have said on our past few meetings, we continue to be on budget and on schedule. So things are going along well. The current update in terms of construction process is the addition has been completely enclosed, so it's weather tight right now. They did prep work these past 2 weeks, and they are preparing to pour the slab on grade on Friday. So there will be a large pump truck and concrete trucks on Friday. So it'll be an exciting day. At the same time that they are pouring that slab, they will also pour the slab for the sprinkler room, here indicated in blue. That portion of the addition is also completely weather tight and ready for the slab. At the interior of the building, the restrooms are nearing completion. The tile work is complete. They are installing fixtures. They're getting ready to install the ceiling grids and light fixtures. So soon those restrooms will be back online. In what we call Area B, the existing adult collection space, all the wall framing is complete. The sheetrock has been hung and they are taping and getting ready to start painting next week. So if anyone goes on a tour or steps in, you'll see that although there's a lot of construction material in there, the new offices and the teen room have been framed out and are looking good. The last area that's under construction right now is in yellow, and that is the admin area with the tech services, director's office, assistant director's office, and such. That area is also completely framed. The sheetrock has been installed, and they are taping and prepping for paint in about 2 weeks. So things are moving along right with the schedule. Things are going well with contractors and sequencing the work. So we're happy so far.
Hey, Megan, I just want to, while you have this slide up, tell the board that Area B, the brown area, will probably be done by April, and it wasn't supposed to be started until June.
A good point. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Moving on to budget. This is an update from last month and just updating what we have spent to date. Biggest source of expenditures is the contractors and their monthly payments. So that number is increased to 1,564,787. We continue to carry our construction contingency. We have the same value as last month, which is we've used 150,688 of that budgeted line item. Our floor finish material purchase line item, now we've finalized our selections and submitted the purchase order, so that amount was $100,854.63. So looks like we may be under budget on that line item. And then we've continued to have some project soft costs with design team fees, CM fees, inspections and such. So that number has gone up slightly, but overall we are tracking as anticipated and things are going well. In terms of budget, I had two change order topics to discuss with you this evening, not because they're a substantial dollar amount, but simply because for expediency and keeping the contractors moving, I can get your approval tonight and keep everything moving forward. The first item for review is that Area B, which right now is all opened up. Now that we were able to take all the ceilings down and they're installing the heat pumps and coordinating the existing heat pumps and the existing ductwork, we have noted that the ceiling height needs to be adjusted slightly because of some of that existing heat pump equipment being lower than the 10-foot ceiling and throughout the entire space. So what we propose to do to maintain as much ceiling height as we can and to add some visual interest in that space, because it is a large open area, is we'd like to have the contractor, the GC, install soffits following the column line. So there's a column here and here and here and here. So we'd like to frame out this area. It'll give it some visual interest, and then it'll help us step the ceilings down so that we can accommodate the condensate piping and existing conditions of some of those mechanical units without having to lower the entire ceiling area or to do some funny sort of build outs around those pieces of equipment. So the GC has given us a change order proposal in the amount of $13,390.54. We've had Kirk and Pete from Turner review the numbers and the time and material numbers, and they're comfortable with this. So I'd like to bring it to you folks for review.
Sure. So just so the board is aware, the committee on this wasn't going to be able to get together for a committee vote to approve this. And so Kathy and Tim suggested that we just do it at the full board meeting because we have everybody here to keep moving things forward. So now is the chance to ask Megan questions before we vote on this change order. And Kathy, if you have anything else to add, please chime in.
Actually, the design committee already had an update about this ceiling height issue. But I think what happened was that at the last design meeting, we didn't have the number yet. So now there's the number, and time is a bit of the essence, since I guess they want to get going with this. And I think this was for certain materials and I forget exactly, drywall and the like to do the ceiling height. And because we have, I think, some shelving that's pretty tall, like 7 feet tall, or that we're going to be putting in the area, that the thought was that if we had a 9-foot ceiling in the entire area, it would be kind of low for the what's going to go into the space. So that was the impetus for trying to raise the height of the ceiling where it can be raised. You could, if I've misspoken at all, I'm sure Megan can correct me. But that's the design committee already had a little had some information on this, but like I said, didn't have the number, and we're not going to meet as a committee regularly till next week, and they wanted to get going on this, because the ceilings, like you said, are down, and they want to move the project forward. So that's
Barbara, I know you have a question. You are on mute.
Yep. I just wanted to ask, what is the dollar figure for putting in the soffits?
To build the soffits, it's $13,390.54.
And that would still maintain the height that Kathy was concerned about.
It will, in this diagram, it'll give us 10 feet in this area. We'll have a height transition. So we have 9'6" in the center rectangle. And then as we get to the southernmost area where the new fireplace is, that ceiling height will step down to 9 feet. That's our most significant crunch point with that existing equipment and piping.
And these soffits are basically for visual effect, this 13,000?
It'll help us keep the ceiling height so we can have the 10 feet out in this area and then the 9'6" in this area. And it'll divide up the ceiling so that we don't have one long plain flat ceiling, sort of like, grocery stores and things like, or I guess grocery stores are getting pretty modern now, but in some areas like the box stores that just have a flat continuous ceiling, it'll also give us some character and some interest in material transition.
Thank you.
Megan, to follow up, is there an alternative?
The alternative would be we'd have to keep the ceiling height at that lowest number of 9 feet to accommodate that low point.
Okay, so our option is to do this sort of staggered height ceiling, or everything is 9 feet?
Correct.
Okay. Are there other questions? Phil?
If we went with everything at 9 feet, is that zero additional cost what's in the budget today, or is there still a cost with lowering the ceiling?
There would be no additional cost to doing that.
Okay.
Marcia, do you have a question? You're on mute. Still muted. We can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Does this do anything to the lighting design? Any changes necessary because of the soffit interfering with the lighting in the area?
The lights are these rectangles here, so it actually works out pretty well with the lighting.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Just a follow-up, you said the reason for this is because the heating units are larger than what you had predicted, is that correct?
Some of the condensate piping and what that was concealed in the original framing of the walls is lower than what one might have anticipated. It was concealed until we took down all the walls and the ceilings and could see exactly how things were routed.
Thank you.
I'm scrolling through. Are there other hands, questions? Richard? Richard, we can't hear you.
That I would like to move acceptance of this change order in the amount of $13,390.54.
I will second it.
Motion by Richard, second by Peter. Is there discussion? I see no hands as I'm scrolling. So we'll go to roll call vote. Barbara?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Peter?
In favor.
Marcia?
Yes.
Kathy?
yes.
Herb?
Yes.
Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Caitlin, yes. Jason?
Yes, welcome back, Herb.
Oh,
Thank you very much, Jason. So unanimous at 6:28 p.m. The motion for the change order is approved.
Thank you. One other thing to talk about that is, I know on Barbara's mind, she's asked about it, and we've talked about it at the very beginning of the project and how to address it. The existing building, when it was finished or nearing completion, there was the identified issue of the slab curling, which layman's terms means it's not completely flush and flat. And we had tried to conceptually address this in our documents before we had the full extent of the conditions. I think, Barbara, a meeting or two ago, you had asked what we were doing about the floor level. Now that we have all the demolition completed in that big adult collection space, we've been able to see the quality of the slab on a large scale. This is an image from that space. What we've noticed now is that, if you can see these sort of lines, those are saw cuts, and they fall on a 12 by 12 grid for the entire building. And at each of those saw cuts that makes a square, that concrete slab has curled up at all four sides. So it sort of is like a dish, like almost like a contact lens. So it's lower in the center and then higher as it gets to the outside edges. This is a piece of flat metal that's running across one of those 12 by 12 squares, and you can see that there's a void underneath it at part of it. And this is fairly consistent throughout the entire building. Some areas are somewhat worse than others, but it's fairly consistent. So we had a meeting with the general contractor and his flooring subcontractor, whom we've worked with a number of times, and they're sort of our go-to guys when we have questions and need a consult. So we were happy to see that they are on this job. Their thought is, we did buy some self-leveling work, as we discussed before in the bid documents. There's no good area to start and stop it because of the uniform inconsistencies of the slabs. Their recommendation was to not do any slab self-leveling work. It's sort of an all or nothing thing for spaces. Either we do the entire collection space or not just a portion of it. But their recommendation was to not do any additional leveling work, simply because they think the flooring products we're putting down should conceal most of these imperfections, like your broadloom carpeting did prior to this. I don't know if anyone ever commented or had any issues with, I've never heard of anyone having issues with walking across the floor, seeing that it was uneven when the broadloom carpeting was in place. That product, broadloom carpeting, has a much thinner backing. It's that jute woven backing. And what we're using moving forward is carpet tile with a vinyl backing. So it has a pretty substantial back. And then the LVT, the luxury vinyl tile, also has a significant vinyl backing. So the flooring installers are fairly confident that our materials are going to cover any of these lines and imperfections. They are going to do typical floor prep work, so putting leveler over high points and saw cuts, but they're not going to level the entire floor, because in some areas those dips are almost an inch. So I wanted to bring it before the board so that we could review this and get a final resolution on it. I did get some rough orders of magnitude on what it would cost to do self-leveling work in some spaces, so we could see what the dollar value really means. To do, in addition to what we had already called out for in that adult collection space, it would be approximately another $35,000 to level the large open area for the adult collection space. The meeting rooms along the north of the building and the cafe, and then, or not the cafe, I'm sorry, the new Norman Skill Room, it would be another $20,000 worth of work. And then the staff office spaces would be approximately about $25,000 more. So these would be in addition to the contract values. So I wanted to bring it before the board to see what their thoughts were, or what your thoughts are, sorry.
Barbara.
I have a comment.
Oh yeah, Phil, please, or Herb, please.
Yeah, I have a comment. Why would it need leveling in the first place? Was the work not done correctly that everything would be leveled?
During the original construction of the building, there were some issues with the concrete slab as it was poured and installed.
So the concrete slab wasn't level to begin with? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know how out of level it was, but over time it has certainly curled. I don't know if it immediately curled. Barbara, I know you were on the board. Do you know when the imperfection was first noted?
It was noted almost immediately. It didn't take time at all. And you're correct. When we took the core samples, the substrata had not been, laid down properly, and I guess plastic hadn't been laid down. So the staff were constantly, talking about the floor itself, and we're so worried that people are going to be tripping. And as I'm looking at your picture here, and you say in some areas it's an inch, I'm sort of assured that if you have the new carpeting put down, you won't notice it. But if you're looking at areas that are an inch or more, out of level, that's a lot.
Okay, and these problems weren't seen when the original bids were put in?
For this project, we didn't have enough open area, and with the carpet in place, we didn't see as much until we were able to remove the stacks and remove the flooring and see the underlying conditions. We did try to assume some self-leveling work, but now that we can see a bigger open area, we're not sure what that portion that we did buy does for benefit if we don't do the entire space.
And it's from the concrete settling into the ground, not unevenly, or is that what caused it?
It's from the concrete work originally not being provided as specified. So you had an inferior product that would.
Megan, you said that it would take about 35,000 to level the main area there, correct?
Yes.
And the other areas, smaller areas, which I guess I feel more confident your rug situation might take care of when you're talking only about a 9x20 room or something like that. But where everything is wide open here, if 35,000 would correct the main area, I guess right now, unless other people have other ideas, I'm sort of leaning in that direction. I mean, we had a lawsuit over this and everything. As I said, people notice it very, very quickly.
Barbara, I'm not familiar. Can you, was the lawsuit someone taking legal action against the library, or was it the library against the original contractors who put the floor in?
Margaret can probably update me better on this one, but I believe that it was the contractor, and then their subcontractors that actually were responsible for the cement.
Okay.
That's correct. There were a couple of large items on the punch list, and the flooring was one of them. I will add that during the winter time, when there are frost heaves, the curling is much more pronounced.
So we may be looking at its first time of the year right now and seeing that inch in a few areas.
Had any serious injuries as a result of these uneven floors?
Nothing serious. I do notice if there are frequent users in the library or staff members, you do sort of trip up. You kind of know where the heaves are. You try to avoid them, but if you're in a hurry or something like that, you just don't think about it and your foot catches. But luckily, we've been very fortunate in that regard that there have been no major injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, I see you with a hand up.
Yeah, so this was really a construction issue from the very beginning. But with that being said, if we were to make the corrections now, we still have to worry about curling with respect to the weight of having these stacks on the floor for decades? Or is that not something to be concerned about here?
There shouldn't be much more change in the slab. We're going to make the stack condition better because we are less shorter runs stacks instead of doing the longer aisles. We're doing all stacks. We're breaking them.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I know I couldn't hear you.
You're unmuted.
Somebody needs to mute. We hear somebody breathing.
We wouldn't anticipate the stacks having any effect on the slab. They haven't changed it in the past almost 30 years. And our stack conditions are going to be better. Our aisles are wider, and we're trying to limit the long, tall stack aisles. So we wouldn't anticipate the stacks having any impact on the slab condition. That's a great question. It's a significant load to that.
One more thing to clarify, when you were talking about this being an all or nothing kind of thing, it is broken out by these 3 sections, so we could feasibly address one of these sections, right?
It was more the all or nothing in that large open area.
Right, we can't do a segment of that one area.
Exactly. It's hard to make a transition point there.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning with Barbara on this then.
This is Marcia. I am leaning toward doing all of it. I understand we have a large area that's going to cost $35,000, but now that we've identified the problem exists in 3 areas. I'm a little reluctant to agree to do it for one area and not to agree to do it for the staff and the meeting and study rooms as well. The problem's been uncovered, so to speak. And I think that equity would require that we do it for all the areas that we are now made aware of. I have a question for Megan, if I might. Was this problem identified when we first went to bids and we looked at the previous plans? Since it was a problem that was pre-existing, was it not anticipated?
We did know about it, and Barbara had made sure it stayed on our radar as we went through the whole design development process. We anticipated it, and we called out for a specific amount of square footage to be addressed with self-leveling. We identified the south area of the adult collection space, thinking that would be the most visible and trafficked area. But we also knew that once we could uncover more, we might be able to see more and reallocate that square footage that we bought. But now that we actually were able to open up all of it, it's a consistent issue throughout the space, which sometimes you see it more at the perimeter where you have the transition you're in sub-slab conditions. Unfortunately, your issue is consistent.
Are these areas are adjacent to one another?
In terms of like the meeting rooms and staff areas?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that if we fixed the large area for $35,000, the other 2 adjacent areas not being fixed, you would see a pronounced difference in the flooring, correct?
They would probably bring in 2 doorways, like in this case.
I'm sorry, Megan, I can't hear you.
If we did this adult collection space, as we were discussing, I believe they would bring it to the doorways and then feather it into every doorway, so there'd be a smooth transition between the spaces, between what's being addressed and what's being left to remain.
So you're saying there would not be a dip from area to area?
I don't believe so. They're going to try to make it, they know the intent is to make it as smooth and walkable as possible, and they typically have issues where they have to have a stopping point and then feather it out.
Can you explain what feathering means? I'm concerned about safety.
They're going to build it up to match, where it needs to, and then it's sort of like if you've ever done drywall work and had to patch a wall. As you get it back out to the edge of your existing wall surface, you sort of feather it where it's lighter, thinner, maybe not completely thick. That's what they'll do at those doorways. They'll get it in a certain distance and then feather it out so that there's no trip hazards.
Okay. Other than the money, is there a recommendation that you guys would make?
Flooring installers thought that with the products being specified, that you would be okay with not doing the self-leveling work, knowing that you have some additional monies coming in under budget and we have the area opened up almost completely, this is the best time to do it if you were ever going to do it. You're never, I imagine you won't have another opportunity to have this much square footage open, the building closed due to unfortunate circumstances, so we can take advantage of it.
Okay. From a construction perspective, would you have any qualms about doing one area and not the other two?
I don't believe so. I think this adult collection space is sort of the most publicly traversed and heavily used, and there's so many pathways that it's definitely probably your most significant area. So I would support doing this area independently.
Okay, thank you,
Barbara.
Megan. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out, Mark was talking about equity, but the other areas are smaller areas, like the administrative area, where you don't really have that much walking area. So I'm very, very comfortable and would like to take advantage of this opening because of what you've described and, get that done. I'm less concerned about the smaller areas, which are, smaller rooms. I think, did we not also do the large meeting room when we re-rugged it? Didn't we do the leveling there?
I believe you did. I think that's
We
what
did the liquid leveling, which
Right.
I believe we're also already going to do in this area. But if I heard Megan correctly, that the liquid leveling in this area would help, but it wouldn't address some of the extreme 1-inch discrepancies, right, Megan?
the traditional floor prep that they do wouldn't address all of the issues, but it would address a majority of them. If we did a true full self-leveling of this space, they're going to pour it and smooth it out so it's as perfect as they can get it.
Yeah, I was concerned about safety and, a real difference if the areas were adjacent. And you're suggesting that there wouldn't be a safety issue, Megan? That you would try to level it out?
They try to level it out at all doorways and any transition so that there aren't trip hazards.
Okay, thank you.
Megan,
Oh, sorry.
when do you need a decision on these things by?
As soon as possible within reason. Right now for area, they're starting, as I said earlier, they're doing the sheetrock. They're getting ready to paint. I believe the carpet installation work or the flooring installation work is scheduled for mid-month next month. So they need to know if they've got an extra few days or week or two of work to do prior to the flooring installation. This may have some effect on the schedule, but we're doing a really good job of being ahead of schedule. As Tim indicated, this area wasn't supposed to start construction till near the end of our project, and it's supposed to be completed and ready in April.
Okay. Barbara, I just want to check in with Sean. Sean, you've manually put the folks on the phone on mute. If you would just momentarily take Herb off mute so I can check in and see if he has a question.
Sure. One caller had dropped off, and it looks like the caller ending in 61 is not muted right now. I'm not sure who that is.
Okay.
That should be me.
That would be you, Herb. Yep. So, Sean, how does Herb manually mute his telephone line? The rest of us have a nice button.
He could hit the mute on his telephone if it's a cell phone, maybe.
All right. But in the meantime, Herb, do you have any questions?
Let me see. Yeah. What exactly does the liquid leveling consist of?
Liquid leveling, I think Tim was referring to, is the typical floor prep that flooring installers do before they put down a new finished floor system. So they put like a sort of skim coat over joints and any imperfections in the floor, if there's any infill work or repairs done, so that you have a good, clean, consistent subsurface to put new flooring down on.
So that levels it to a certain extent.
Correct. They don't do it over the entire floor. They do it where there's discrepancies or issues.
Uh-huh. And you said that some discrepancies are up to 1 inch. Could that be done with with more liquid leveling? Could that be leveled by just putting more in there?
They can try to. It's sort of hard to have a start and an end point in that situation, is what they were explaining to me.
Uh-huh.
It's happening in each one of those squares.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
All right, thanks, Herb. Phil?
Two things. Hi, Herb. *6 will mute you, and *6 will unmute you again. The other thing is, if we could take a look back at the budget page, and if somebody would mind talking through where it is that we have discretionary funds or funds where we have come in under budget that we might be able to use for this, since it's a big chunk of money, that would be amazing.
This is our project budget summary. We have construction hard costs, which are the 5 prime contracts that we hold right now for the general construction, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and fire protection. We have a budget allocation for millwork, which we have not bid yet. And then we have our construction contingency, and that is for buried condition, things that arise in the field. And then any additional work that the owner identifies that they'd like to add to the project scope. When we opened our bids, we were under budget, so we were able to set aside a healthy contingency for this construction. So we have allocated $500,000 to that as a budget allowance. To date, we have spent $150,688, which leaves us a little over $349,000. We also, at the bottom of this summary, or here we have our soft costs and other expenses. So our total project anticipated, we have a balance remaining of $600,000 that hasn't been assigned to anything yet.
So we have 350 in things can come up budget, as well as 600,000 in we're expecting to be under budget. And it's things like this that those are intended to be used for.
Correct.
The one last thing would be, since we haven't billed out the millwork yet, and it's my very vague and unprofessional understanding that during the pandemic, material costs in general have gone up. Do you anticipate that we may have an issue getting that 350,000 because of material costs in the market right now?
That budget value is very conservative, so I think that we should be fine. We're getting ready to do a final review of the package with staff in terms of their circ desks and things like that, and then we'll get it out so we can try to stay ahead. We just got an update at my office today about construction supply costs continuing to go up, so I'd like to get it out and sort of miss as much as we can of these continual annual increases.
Thank you.
Megan, can you go back to the screen with the 3 areas and amounts?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So perhaps, so these are just anticipated values, so we can't vote on a direct amount or a specific amount. Is that correct? You'd have to go to bid.
We just need a change order proposal from the general contractor. He has a rough square footage number, but because we're going to potentially do this in multiple phases of implementation, given our construction process, we don't have a number for all of these areas. So he can get it, but he hadn't finished getting the numbers together right now.
Okay. And is it, can we buy in bulk, I guess, is that part of it? If we do them all, it'll save on the price per square foot.
In this case, I don't believe so, because it's going to be multiple mobilizations.
This is Kirk. Yeah, unfortunately, this is one of those things that it kind of is what it is in this situation. It's not, you'd like to say, yes, there's some benefit to bulk, but there's preparation and mobilizations that are going to account for this. So that's one of those items that you won't be able to. And another thing I like to add is when you deal with flooring, we like to call it making it flat and not level. So they're going to make sure that that is more of a safe surface to walk on and it's flat. But if you were to put a level on it, it might not be perfectly level, but flat.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Barbara. You are unmuted.
Sorry. Is it possible to make a motion to do the large meeting room area and put a cap on the cost? Or I don't know how you would make the motion, but I do think we should do it tonight so that they can proceed, with their timetable.
So that's a great question. I believe we could probably make a motion to approve a change order to address the slab curl in the adult collection area for an amount not to exceed $40,000.
Hey, Caitlin?
Yes, Peter.
I would be open. I know that Barbara just put that motion out there, but I would be open to doing a motion for, if we say up to 90,000, to just get the whole thing done. You know what I mean? Let's do it right and make sure it's corrected throughout the whole building. I'd feel better about doing it that way than piecemeal and then having an issue down the road from now where we got.
Okay, Barbara.
The only thing with that, Peter, is that we haven't really had a trouble with those other areas that they talk about, because they're smaller areas with a desk and, some chairs versus a large walk area where you have in the other area. The administrative area has never really complained, as far as I know. Now, Margaret, is on and she could clarify that or not. But most of the complaints, in fact, all the complaints that I ever heard about were in this large area.
The only thing I would say is it's like taking your car to the car dealership. You go there because you think you got one problem. They tear it all apart and say you got 3 different issues. And sometimes it's better to just fix all 3 issues than just deal with the one that you went there in the first place. Like I said, I just think it's a better move than 5-10 years from now when we have to tear all this stuff up, and it would probably cost even more at that point in time to try and fix those 2 smaller areas.
Peter, your 90,000 suggestion would be about
10,000.
Yeah, Barbara, could you mute, please? I'm getting a lot of feedback. Thank you. So that it would be 10,000. Would you be opposed if that total was 90 and it was then 5,000 give or take on either direction, or on each of them? I understand, and I would agree with you, we should do all the work. But I would hate to have the motion of all the work not passed if some people only want to do some. Doing it piecemeal gives the board a better chance to pass the motion to at least get the large area done for sure.
Then yeah. How about we just do 3 different motions? We'll do one for the 35, one for the 20, and one for the 25. And that way, if not everybody agrees with doing all of them, I agree with you that we don't want to.
We don't want to lose out the big one. Would you be comfortable if we increased from 35 to 40, from 20 to 25, and from 25 to 30, just to give 5,000 wiggle room on each?
I would be fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Barbara.
If Margaret is there, could she confirm my recollection that we haven't really had a problem with the administrative area?
There are a few tough spots outside Tim's office at the doorway entries. It's not been severely pronounced, but as I said, during the winter, every now and then your foot catches, and you really don't think about it until after it happens, and then you go, oh, it was the floor,
Okay, and if Kurt is still on, would it be your recommendation to do all 3 areas or just the large area where we have had the majority of the problems.
I
Is
am.
that addressed? Oh, sorry. Is that addressed to me?
No, that's for Kirk.
Okay, sorry.
I see the most benefit, Barbara, and to the board coming from that main area. As you spoke about, the other areas would be nice to do if you have the money and we're willing to do it. But the most benefit, in my personal opinion, is coming from that main collection area.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions, or Peter, would you like to start us off with some motions?
Sure. Let me see. I make a motion to approve up to $40,000 for the slab repair for the adult collection area.
All right. Second by Barbara. Quick roll call, starting with Barbara. Barbara?
Yes.
Phil? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I can't see everybody when there is someone sharing the screen. Was there, Megan? Was there someone who wanted to speak on this? Or am I just hearing background?
Caitlin,
I
would
think-
you want me to stop sharing?
No, that's okay. All right.
I think Tim had accident, or he went out of the meeting and just came back in. I think that's what it is.
Okay. Thank you.
I am back.
All right.
Did I get called on?
No.
Okay.
Phil. Yes. Peter.
Yes.
Yes, from Peter. Marcia.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Herb.
Yes.
Noreen.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
Caitlin. Yes. Jason.
Yes.
Excellent. Unanimous at 7 p.m. The board approves a motion to address the slab curl issues in the adult collection area for up to $40,000.
I would like to make a
Peter.
motion to approve up to $25,000 to be used for slab repair for the meeting and study rooms.
Is there a second? Phil, I've got a second by Phil. Is there discussion? Barbara.
I just have a question as to the dollar amount for the square footage for the large area. Was estimated at 35,000 for the meeting and the study rooms, which are along the, I guess, the northern perimeter of the, to me, is the much smaller area as I'm visualizing it, and it's half the cost of that main area. My perception of square footage may be off, but I'd like Megan, if she could address that disparity that I see, and the 35,000 versus 20,000.
Barbara, you're correct. We had already bought a good amount of this adult collection space in our base bid in our documents already. So it's $35,000 in addition to what we had already bought. And when I said meeting room and these study rooms, I was also including this new meeting room and this space as well.
Okay.
Because that's still the existing slab that hasn't been addressed, like the Helderberg room. So you're absolutely.
All right. Other questions or discussion before we go into a vote?
Just curious, is this something that Megan, that you were recommending? Because I thought that the main concern was the larger space. I just wasn't sure where that was, if that was a recommendation to do all the space.
You have the ability to do it right now with the building being unoccupied with the public and so much renovation being done right now. Certainly our first recommendation is to do that public area, especially if there's known trip spots and areas of concern. In the future, we've tried to keep this building, flexible and open it might be wise to do all of this as you can right now, because you don't know what you might do in the future in terms of spaces and functions. And it's going to be hard in the future to know where those sort of lines of demarcation are, where leveling has been done in one meeting room and then in a collection area, but it's not been done in others. I think it'll help for uniformity for the future.
Other questions, discussion? Barbara?
I think if my understanding is correct, most of the heaving occurred early on in the construction project. And I don't know if it is an annual thing that with the frost heaves, if you get more, but it seems to me that over the years, it's sort of stabilized its heaving. So again, I'm not a construction worker. Megan, you can tell us, is it going to get worse in those other areas over time, or is it stable and you live with it as we've lived with the last 20 years?
Kirk can weigh in on this as well, but I don't believe it's going to change any more than it already has. You're right. When it was poured, it did that initial curl, and it's stabilized now. As Margaret said, in the winter with frost heaves, they do get a little more exacerbated, but I think it's an annual increase and then decrease, so it shouldn't get any worse. Kirk,
Correct. That's how I agree with you, Megan, on that. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit more here and there, but it is what it is right now. And that's what's probably going to stay at, with a little bit of heating as frost and thawing happens.
All right. Did any other board members, other than Barbara, wanted to speak on this, discuss, question before we go to a vote? All right. Yes, Barbara?
Just as in conclusion, listening to Kirk and to Megan, it seems that the worst has happened. It's been fine for 20 years. Not that it's been fine, but because of these small areas, and as you look at the chart there, there's not much walking area in all those study rooms. And the administrative offices are relatively small. So I guess I would like to save that money for future contingencies, and when it comes to a vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. All right. So we will go to a vote, starting with. Sorry, Kathy.
I'm sorry. Could the motion be restated just for the minutes? I don't recall exactly what the motion was.
Peter, would you restate your motion, please?
Could Megan bring up my screen here with my numbers on it? Thank you. The motion's to approve up to $25,000 to be used to fix the slab repair issue for the meetings, our meeting and study rooms. That's what it is. Is that good, Kathy? Or
okay,
no?
Great. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter. So roll call vote. Barbara?
No.
Bill?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Herb?
No.
Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Abstain.
Caitlin, yes. Jason?
Yes.
So 7 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention. The motion passes at 7:07 p.m.
I would like to make another motion to approve up to $30,000 to be used for slab repair for the staff areas.
Thank you. Yes, Phil. Second?
Second.
I'll second that.
So we'll got to be quicker, Jason. We've got Phil with the second. So is there any new discussion to be had about the staff area that's different from the meeting and study rooms?
I'm just a little bit confused because I heard, and maybe I didn't follow the discussion, I heard from some people that it was bad and other people, Margaret, you said it's bad in spots. Can you just give a little bit more detail about what's going on outside Tim's office, et cetera?
It's probably, I didn't look closely at the floor recently, but it's probably heaving right where the seams meet more. So as Megan said, are they 12-foot squares, Megan? So it's just a random spot here and there every 12 feet. And if you look at the administrative area, you know it's not that large. So, there are a couple spots that are noticeable, but other than that, there's been no change in all the time that we've been there.
Megan and Kirk, this brings up a question. If it's silly, I apologize, but couldn't that be sanded or in some way evened for lesser cost, being that it's spotty and localized?
I'm confused. What are you saying?
I'm saying that this is in smaller areas, and can't those smaller areas just be treated in a less expensive way than the amount that they're talking about?
I'm going to be honest with you, Richard. Sometimes when you look at these items, that leveler is honestly the most cost-effective labor-wise. When you start getting into sanding these areas, the equipment gets more costly. The time and effort to get more costly. And if you happen to have someone that makes a mistake, now you're repairing what you just sanded. So that's my opinion on some of these items. That's truly the most cost effective.
That's why you're here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is there further discussion on the staff area? All right, I see none. We'll go to a roll call vote. And as a reminder, the motion is to approve a change order for up to, this one's 30, Megan?
25, I think.
25. So nope, this was 30,000 was Peter's motion. It was 5 above to give a little wiggle room to correct the slab issue in the staff areas. Is that correct, Peter?
That is correct.
Excellent. So roll call, Barbara?
No.
Phil?
Yes.
Peter?
In favor.
Marcia?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Herb?
No.
Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Abstain.
Kate? Yes. Jason?
Yes.
So 7 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention. The motion passes at 7:11 p.m. Thank you, board. Megan, please go on with the presentation.
The only other thing to discuss this evening was both Tim and I have had a conversation with the electrical engineers about the generator for the building. And they've done some preliminary takeoffs about what the load is for the building and the size of the generator. The recommendation is to do a natural gas generator, which works with your site because you have natural gas already on site. So you won't have the diesel maintenance, although diesel generators can be a little less expensive. There's more maintenance, and then you have a duration on how long your generators can serve. We reviewed what the building or what the generator should cover for the building if it was only going to be a partial service or a full service. And I think our recommendation is to do the full building rather than only like life safety type things, lighting and heat. If you do the full building, you have the ability to be a place of shelter and have air conditioning and all of your amenities accessible. We talked at length about this, and right now our engineers are thinking that this is going to be between $150,000 and $200,000. They still have a little more legwork to do on it, but they wanted to give us the ballpark number. And it's something that we can look at doing for a DLD grant if it's something that the library wants to pursue. We can also consider doing sort of the infrastructure work right now, which would be putting in the transfer switch so that the automatic transfer switch is when the power goes out, the systems automatically change over to the generator. That's a substantial amount of work, and that would be wise to tackle right now. As we understand it from the engineers, we have a very large load service coming into the building. So to install the transfer switch, the building's power is going to need to be taken offline for a number of days so that it can be transferred and the switch installed. So they're going to look into a little more detail, but right now they were thinking that doing that infrastructure work would be in the range of probably $60,000 to $90,000 and would get you in good shape for the future when you were ready to do the generator project. I can't imagine another time when you'd be able to take the building offline for a number of days to do this work. So it's something to consider. We'll have probably a more formal update for you, but I wanted to just keep you updated because this is a substantial amount of money.
Thank you, Megan. When would that decision need to be made by?
Right now, I think probably our next board meeting. And if I know anything more before then, I'll reach out to you guys.
Thank you. Is that all, Megan, from your?
That is, unless you had anything to add about the generator.
Tim, did you have anything to add about the generator? And then Barbara, I do see your hand.
My add would be a question. Well, first, what I'll add is that a generator is definitely grantable through the Upper Hudson Library System program. I spoke to Tim Burke about that this week, and we have tended to get the full 50% that we are eligible for every year. That doesn't mean we would get anything when we applied, but we've got a pretty good track record. And the other thing is to ask Megan, if we did the intermediate step where we made the building ready for a generator in the future for 60 to 90,000, would that be in addition to the 150 to 200,000, or would it be a portion of the 150?
It would be a portion of that 150 to $200,000.
Okay.
So in theory, you could actually maybe do 2 DLD grants for it. Not that I love doing all that work with you guys, but it's an option to consider, doing the infrastructure 1 year and the actual implementation the second year.
Yeah, the only advantage of that, of doing 2 DLD grants would be that you would put it would be a cash flow advantage in a sense. And theoretically, if money got tight in Upper Hudson, you'd have a better chance of getting 50% of your cost each time rather than 50% of the total cost in the first year. But I think really it's mostly a cash flow issue, correct?
Megan, is it?
I agree with Tim.
Okay. Barbara.
I just want to say I'm totally in support of the infrastructure build in, and depending upon, how Tim and Tim Burke feel that we would submit the grant. But I think while all the walls are open, we should definitely do at least the infrastructure.
Thank you, Barbara. So, board members, it looks like Megan would like us to make a motion on this at the next meeting. Is that correct, Megan?
Yes.
Okay. So in the meantime, if folks have very specific questions that you would like answers to for the next board meeting for discussion, please send them to Kathy, the chair of the committee, and we'll get some answers for the board. That way Megan can be prepared for the next meeting to answer our questions.
Caitlin, can I ask one question now about the generator?
Yes, I cannot guarantee Megan has the answer.
No, and I don't think it's Megan. Number one, do we currently have a generator? That's first. Second, do other libraries generally have generators? And third, what is the disadvantage? What are the risks of not having one? 3-part question.
You do not have a generator right now. A majority of the larger or more urban suburban libraries have been implementing generator projects in the past few years. It makes it creates excuse me, It allows you to serve as a warming station, and you offer amenities during storms without necessarily being designated as a shelter. So there's a PR component and a good neighbor component to it. And the benefit would be that in a winter storm, you don't have pipes freezing and systems going offline.
Okay.
I would just, if I may add, in answer to Richard's question, it's our location on Western Avenue makes us subject to relatively frequent power outages. I would say maybe 3 or 4 in my 7 years, usually the result of a traffic accident that hits a utility pole, and generally everything between Route 155 and Route 146 near the Hannaford is out for 3 or 4 hours. So when that happens, we have to close. Such closures would be not quite impossible, but a lot rarer.
Thank you.
If
Marcia, yes.
If we put in a generator, would we then be required to be a sheltering station? Or
You would not be required. The town already has a number of locations that are public shelters.
but we could offer to be a sheltering station?
You could. Typically, our recommendation is that you don't offer.
I'm not advocating for it. I just want to get the information.
You could volunteer, yes.
Thank you.
Right. I'm sorry, scrolling through looking for other hands. All right. I don't see any. Thanks, Megan. All right. If there's nothing else for Megan or from Megan, thank you so much. And thanks, Kirk, for jumping. Oh, Tim Wiles.
Don't we like to ask, sorry, but Megan and Kirk to stay for the design committee report?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Megan and Kirk.
Almost. So Kathy for the design committee report.
Okay, I'll be quick. We had a meeting on February 3rd, and we talked a lot about the different design elements of the children's room and the teen room and the staff room. We've been talking a lot about furniture and flooring and different elements of just that kind of design. We talked a lot about the shelving units. I think I mentioned that that we had talked about that in relation also to the ceiling heights, and just how the higher shelving units are better in higher ceiling heights. And we just talked about we talked also a lot about the fish tank and the cafe. And I think that just bidding out the potentially trying to get the cafe going. And I think, yeah, we talked a lot about the potential fish tank, and we didn't have any change orders at our last meeting. So that's pretty much it. I mean, if anyone has anyone else who's there has anything to add, that would be great. Otherwise, that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you. So I believe that means, unless I'm wrong, thank you, Megan. Looks like your attention is wanted elsewhere. It's okay. So have a good night, and thank you guys again for the update and all the great work. So that brings us to the treasurer's report. Tony, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. This month's Treasury report will be on the brief side as a result of the meeting being earlier than typically held at the end of the month. The financial statements weren't yet available. But I did look at the check register that was provided. And basically the way that I approached that, given that it couldn't be cross-referenced against financial statements, was to look at the categories of all the expenses and just make sure that they fell in line with typical month's check writing, and any large dollar amounts had descriptions that matched the general operations of the library, including the construction. And from that point of view, the check register did seem to encompass those elements. And again, not being able to cross-reference against financial statements, the conclusion of my report is basically that the check register did involve categories of expenses that typically fall in line with the library's operations or with the construction process that's the library is currently going through. I know it's brief, I apologize, and next month's will be more robust.
Thank you so much, Tony. Is there questions for Tony that he could maybe possibly answer based on what he's just reported to us? All right. Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report for January 2021 and the check register for February 2021? Marcia? Marcia makes the motion. Is there a second? Phil, second. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Barbara? Barbara is in favor. Phil?
Yes.
Yes, Phil. Peter?
In favor?
Marcia? Marcia's in favor. Kathy?
In favor.
Thank you, Kathy. Herb?
In favor.
Noreen?
Yes, in favor.
Richard?
Yes.
Caitlin, yes. Jason?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Unanimous at 7:25. The board accepts the treasurer's report for January 2021 and the check register for February 2021. Kathy, you are up for committee reports if you have any.
My only report was design committee. I don't have, the other committees have not met.
Great, thank you. Barbara, finance, and I guess Carol also, perhaps if you will be prepared. Barbara, go ahead with your committee report.
Yes, I think everybody has received the proposed budget for 2021 to 2022. If you want to pull it up, Carol and her team have done a great job putting this together and making the notes so that people understand some of the changes that we have made. We have kept it under the 2% limit. Carol, is it still at 1.43?
It's actually 1.48.
Oh, 1.48. Okay, thank you. So if you have any questions, between Carol and myself and Tim, we should be able to answer them hopefully.
Barbara?
Yes.
Yeah, are there any pages in the budget for the next year? Because I know because we haven't been open, I don't think we haven't used any of the pages that we had before. Do you is it anticipated in the budget that we will, be hiring these people again?
Well, Tim can clarify that, but I think they've been being paid throughout this closure. But Tim, can you clarify that?
Sure. We are using pages right now. We are not using as many page hours as we would use if circulation was higher, but pages have been working straight through. They were paid for, I think, 2 or 3 months at the very beginning, even though they weren't working, although I think some did a few webinars and so forth. But since we went back into the building, which I believe was in July, pages have been working. And again, at a lower total number of hours than before. There are pages in the budget for next year at typical full year utilization. However, should we be prevented from being fully open for any portion of the fiscal year, we would be using our pages less often. In general, it's envisioned that the curbside service would not cease under any circumstances unless the pandemic got much worse than we've been through already.
Any other questions?
Looks like none. Barbara, when is it your intention to put this at a vote at the next meeting at March? When does this have to be done, Tim, so it can be sent to the voters?
I think it would be great if we could vote on it tonight, because then we could finalize the ballot with the school district. But technically, I believe we have till early April, if I'm not mistaken. Carol, Margaret, Luann, anybody think I'm wrong about that? I'm sorry, Luann.
As far as the deadline for board candidates?
Yeah, it's the same deadline to have a budget that you can print on the ballot.
Okay. I am not sure what the date is this year.
I think it's early April. If you guys want me to, I can, minimize the meeting and search through my email from Linda Livingston to verify that. Why don't I go ahead and do that?
Well, it might be moot, Tim. So if there's a motion to approve this budget now, then the deadline becomes much less important.
I would be happy to move it.
All right.
Seconded.
Okay, so Barbara, what is the motion?
To approve the budget that's proposed for 2021 to 2022. That is in everyone's hand, hopefully, right now.
All right, second by Phil. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Peter, you're coming on and off mute.
I have nothing.
Okay. All right, no discussion. We'll go directly into the vote. Barbara?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Herb?
Yes.
Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Caitlin, yes. Jason?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Unanimous at 7:31 p.m. Board approves next year's budget to be presented to the public. Thank you, everyone. That was excellent. I don't know the last time we've had a budget ready by February, but we haven't had February meetings, so it's excellent. Foundation, Tim,
Kate,
you've got, yeah.
I believe the Finance Committee would be the appropriate place to try to get the resolution to pass a reserve, a repair reserve fund voted upon. Now, I don't know that, I know that I did not bring Chris Lanchanton's text. I don't know if Barbara or any of my staff colleagues did. I can certainly say a thing or two about what that resolution would be about if you'd like.
Yes, please, and thank you.
And that's okay with you, Barbara? Okay, so the board probably has heard about this over the years a number of times, but we have a capital reserve fund, but it is not technically legally created. And so we had Chris Lanchanton do some research on that for us. There are several different types of reserve funds that a board can create, and a true capital reserve fund, when you create it, has to have a capital project associated with it. So a board would have to say, for example, we want to expand the library, so we're creating a capital reserve fund. That ship has already sailed. We're about finished with that, and we shouldn't have any major capital projects over, hopefully, quite some time, if you ask me. But anyway, so we don't really need a capital reserve fund, but there's another type of fund you can create called a repair reserve. I'm sorry, anyone having trouble hearing me? I thought I heard someone say that. Anyway, there's another type of fund you can create called a repair reserve fund. And this is where, when you do your annual budget, you set aside a certain amount of money, could be anything theoretically within the tax cap. And that's what you have on hand for if your building's struck by lightning, or if a semi truck plows through it, or the other kinds of, trees fall on it, a kid sets off a bomb in the bathroom, whatever might happen, you have legally set aside some money to immediately repair that. The alternative to creating a repair reserve fund is, should you have something smaller but catastrophic like that, then you have to borrow money to fix it. So we think that setting up a repair reserve fund is a good idea. If you would like, I can again search the email for Chris Lanchanton's resolution, unless one of my colleagues happened to bring it.
Tim, it's Margaret, and I just emailed the board members a copy of the proposed languages.
Thank you, Margaret. You are awesome.
So if those of you who have access, take a second, and then for those of you who don't, I will go ahead and read.
Caitlin, could you just read it out loud now?
Sure. Whereas Section 6D of the General Municipal Law allows for the establishment of a reserve fund to be known as the Repair Reserve Fund, to be used for repairs of capital improvements or equipment, which repairs are of a type not recurring annually or at shorter intervals. And whereas the Guilderland Public Library Board of Trustees desires to establish a repair reserve fund for the purposes set forth above, it is hereby resolved, the Guilderland Public Library Board of Trustees hereby establishes a fund to be known as the Repair Reserve Fund, effective when we vote on it, to be used in accordance with applicable laws for repairs of capital improvements or equipment which do not occur annually or at shorter intervals.
And just to be slightly clearer, now that I see Margaret's email, the reason we want to vote now is that this fund has to be approved by the voters. So we need to get it on the ballot as it was read, and that's the urgency.
Would that include the money that's already in our reserve fund?
I don't really know the answer to that question. Did what you read, Megan, or excuse me, Caitlin, specify an amount of money?
It does not. The resolution to be, I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. If folks could please mute their lines. Thank you. So there's a resolution to place proposition before voters, and that does in fact include an amount, and it says, whereas the Board of Trustees duly established a repair reserve fund on the date we vote on it and desires to fund such a reserve in the amount of blank, and whereas the Board of Trustees desire to place a proposition before the voters to authorize the funding the repair reserve fund in the amount of blank. So there's room in the resolution to go before the public. to approve specific amounts when we have them. Phil.
The part you skipped over right there in parentheses said the unappropriated 2020-21 fund balance for that first amount. Tim, is that referring to what we have in our technically illegal balance that we would use for this today?
To my best guess, yes. I would wonder if Carol or Tony had any other thoughts, but it seems to me that our practice in the past has been to take the unspent balance of our budget at the end of the year and place it in what we were referring to as our capital reserve account. And that probably the right thing to do would be to, we can't predict right now what that number is going to be on June 30th when our fiscal year ends. So my guess is it either is that number, whatever it would be, or that we could choose, that you could choose to earmark a portion of the 88,900 that's in the coming year's budget for capital improvements and move it into a repair reserve fund. We may need to do a little more work on it before March 21st. Carol?
Tim, I don't think you can appropriate the money that's from the 21-22 budget before the public has voted to accept that budget. You could come up with a dollar amount from this current year's budget and to fund the account. So according to what Chris is telling me is you need voter approval to fund the account. So to start the account and to initially put funds into it, but you can add funds to it with a public hearing and not a vote. So for instance, if you wanted to say, we expect to have $100,000 left over from this year's budget, so you could put that dollar amount in here or whatever dollar amount you feel we will have at the end of, by the end of June, just to start the account. Then at any given time, the board can vote to add funds to that account without having to go back to the voter.
So I wonder if we, and I don't think we could do this tonight, but I wonder if we could ask Chris Lanchanton if we can write this resolution in such a way that it says whatever our surplus amount is for the 2020-2021 budget. And I'm not sure voters would say yes to that. So maybe going back to work, basically. I don't know if it would require a finance committee meeting, but maybe just you, me, Margaret, and David could look at the current year's budget and come back to the board on the 21st with a suggested dollar amount that we think would be safe to put in. Does that make sense, Carol?
Sorry. So, yes.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, it looks like we don't have a dollar amount to put into this resolution to be able to pass it tonight. Is that correct? Bill, after Barbara.
The only thing that we discussed at the finance committee meeting, and to get some definitive clarification from Chris, we have always used this capital reserve fund when we did the Upper Hudson grants, because you have to show that you actually have money in your account to cover your portion of the grant. And I just want to be assured that the money that we would put into that capital reserve fund could be used, for those grants, most of which are repairs or enhancements, which I think would be covered under here. But I just want to be sure, because I want to make sure that we have enough money that to take advantage of these grants.
I like that a lot, Barbara. I think that's a great move, but it also makes me think on the fly here that since a generator at 150 to 200,000 is a potential grant item, that that might be enough money that would be considered a capital reserve. So I could go back and check with Tim Burke and Chris Lanchanton on that, and maybe we create a capital reserve and a repair reserve at the next meeting. Because we know what a generator is going to cost roughly. And let's just say it's 200,000. To me, that seems like a major amount of money. I don't know if there's a, you know, like we built a loading dock once for 36,000 and you know, that was a grantable project through Upper Hudson. So I don't know. It seems to me like it would be best to have both funds if possible, but I do like your thinking on making sure whatever amount we designate is enough to cover the instruction or construction grant that we plan to write for next summer. Does sound to me like we've got homework to do.
Phil.
So my reading of this makes it sound like we should vote on the first resolution today, which is to establish the repair reserve fund, which will have nothing in it. And then maybe next month at the meeting, when we've got more concrete answers to the questions Tim and Barbara are just talking about and know what our balance is at that point, then we could decide to potentially vote on the second one, which would put something before the public to decide if it's okay for us to fund that with this particular balance. But we should vote on the first one now to establish that we want to have a fund so that we can even ask people if we can fund it.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
Certainly. I would like to make a motion to establish a repair reserve fund per the text that was sent to us, unless I need to read that out in its entirety.
It's been read once into the record. I don't believe it needs to be read again unless there's any board members who would like it repeated.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Barbara. Discussion? Marcia? Marcia, you're on mute.
Currently, we do not have such a fund, so this would establish it, correct? Can you hear me?
Yes, that would establish the fund.
Okay, and then we're proposing that we put money into it before the voting?
So this motion is just establishing the fund.
Just to establish it.
Just to establish the fund. To actually be able to put money into it requires voter approval, and that is a specific dollar amount, which Carol and Tim have just said would be presented at the next full board meeting.
That's what I wasn't clear about. Now, I just have another question. At the end of the fiscal year, if there's money left in this repair fund, can it just stay there and be used for the next fiscal year?
Carol?
It can roll over.
Yes, the money can stay in that fund. And the board can then has to approve how it's going to be spent.
But if there's no reason to spend it, can it go over to the next fiscal year?
Yes, they can stay.
So it can stay into perpetuity if it's not used, or whatever balance isn't used can stay in the fund.
Correct. It's basically a board restricted official fund.
It's a restricted fund. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll go into a vote. Barbara?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Peter?
In favor.
Marcia? Yes, from Marcia. Kathy?
Yes.
Herb?
Yes.
Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Caitlin? Yes. Jason?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Unanimous at 7:47. The board passes the resolution to establish a repair reserve fund. So is that all for finance? Okay. Yes, Barbara.
Tony had brought up another issue at the Finance Committee meeting, and I don't know if you've had a chance to research it, Tony, but If you wanted to share it now, that would be fine.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, I did. So the issue that Barbara's referencing is a reserve account that works similar to the repair reserve, but instead of being monies allocated for unexpected repairs, this particular fund is reserved for gaps in tax revenue. And New York State does have a guide that does have information about this type of fund, and it's called a tax revenue fund. And it looks like there's limitations based on the type of locality that is forming it. So if you're a county, if you're a school district, you're prohibited from opening that particular type of account. But then I did some digging into the education law, and there is a similar type of account for school districts that are serving the same purpose. But I could not find any information on New York State's websites regarding establishing that or the rules surrounding it. So I did reach out to Chris to see if she would be able to meet at a future date and discuss the rules that go along with establishing that account. And similar to the discussion that we just had on the reserve account, the discussion points that I would bring up would be how it would be funded. Is there a voter requirement? Are there any restrictions on funding it in terms of dollar amounts? Or are there restrictions on when and how it can be used? The audit guide that's available from New York State on the Repair Reserve Fund and the Capital Reserve Funds gets into those nuances for those particular fundings. But because this type of fund is under education law, it's not captured in the New York State guide. So as a result, I don't have information on the specifics of how the tax revenue reserve fund would operate or what the requirements of the board would be either at its funding or throughout the year. But I did contact Chris, and at a future date, hopefully next meeting, I'll be able to provide the detail that the board can review, then decide about moving forward with that. But the basic intent of the plan of the fund is that if there's an unexpected drop in tax revenue, it would prevent the board from having to go to the municipality to raise taxes. It would be something that the board could draw down to cover expenses that the tax grants didn't cover.
Thanks, Tony. That is excellent. I think we have another resource for you since it's some specific things to school districts. Tim can connect you with someone in the school district who handles the finances there to help with to be another resource to help with those nuanced questions.
Okay.
So awesome. Thank you so much for finding that out.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Barbara, does that conclude finance?
It sure does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Foundation, they met tonight at 6:15. They are probably already done or just about wrapping up. But Tim, you have an update from that you can share?
Sure. I don't have two computers going, but I did get a text from Beth Rienti from who heads up our youth services. And you guys probably all know, in fact, there's information in your packet about our story walk in Towasenta Park, which has been real popular. So we built that through a grant from the Upper Hudson Library System. And this year, we anticipate Upper Hudson funding 2 more story walks throughout our community. And we brought that to the foundation because Upper Hudson pays only a portion of the costs associated. So the foundation voted to give $1,050 to the library, cover 1 story walk completely, and then the portions of the other 2 that Upper Hudson is not covering. So there will be 3 new story walks in town in addition to the one at Towasenta Park. The locations are to be determined, but we do know that all 5 elementary schools are interested in getting one. So it stands to reason that 1 or 2 or 3 will be on the grounds of elementary schools, but they could also be other parks in Guilderland. So the foundation and our youth services department are excited about that, and I think it'll be a great thing for the community. will probably be up, I would guess, by June or July at the latest, in time for people to enjoy a total of 4 story walks this summer in Guilderland. And that's it.
Outstanding. Thank you, Tim. Barbara, personnel?
We have not met.
Okay, and also Barbara, labor management?
Same thing. We haven't met. Now, getting back to personnel, I think within the next month or so, we have to start working on Tim's evaluation, if I'm not correct, Tim?
No, you don't have to. I honestly cannot recall when you do it, but knock yourself out.
Great. So there's some work coming up on that. Noreen, policy committee.
Yes, policy committee met and we drafted a public comment policy to see if it could be approved for this board meeting. But if anybody would like to talk about it, please do so.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Is there a time frame that's required by our bylaws for a policy to be presented before it can be approved?
At the moment, that's an interesting question. I don't think we have that.
Okay. So, Barbara.
I think it does have to follow the 2-step process. In other words, presented here and then voted on at the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I think that's always been the case. Getting to the policy, I would like to see some additional filling out of the brevity of the policy itself. I think I shared with at least the policy committee members the public participation that we use at the school board. And that is a heck of a lot more specific than what we have here. Number one, there is a requirement that you sign up, to attend the meeting, identify yourself, you or an organization that you're representing. And there are guidelines as to how, with the virtual meetings, a person can still continue to do this. On our proposed policy, it says that, again, you can remain anonymous. I check with people on the town board, the various planning boards and stuff like that, and Herb, I think, is on one of them. None of them have ever heard of allowing an anonymous speaker, at any of these meetings, be it a town board meeting, a zoning board meeting. These are public meetings, and the intent is, to allow the public to present their ideas, but never in an anonymous fashion. So I guess I would, ask that we stick with that you identify yourself, you sign up ahead of time, propose if you're in person, you can speak in person, or we make arrangements in the school board policy that you can call in, have you made prior arrangements with your speech, that you limit the time of public comment in each of the periods, and I would move that 30 minutes down to 20, with the proviso that if you have a very contentious issue where you have 50 or 60 people that show up at the meeting, it is with the approval of the board itself that you can extend the time limit, but that the board makes that decision. It wouldn't just be the presiding officer. And the same with the second time period. If you have a 10-minute time period and somebody would like to continue a discussion that the board probably has had at the meeting itself and you want to extend the time, again, it's by a vote of the board, not by the presiding officer. And any of the determinations by the presiding officer, just say if somebody didn't like something that was being said, I don't want to pick on Caitlin, but she's our presiding officer right now, but if she didn't like something that somebody was saying and say, well, no, you can't talk anymore about that particular issue. Again, her ruling would still be under the supervision of the entire board. In other words, you'd have to, if there was disagreement, you'd have to go to a board vote on that. So,
Richard,
as I
hold
said,
on. Richard, I see your hand. You can put it down. You can, if you would, well, when Barbara's all set. Yep.
I'm gonna talk. I'm sorry. I can.
Okay, but those are the things that I would sort of like refined a little bit. I like the idea of, personal attacks on board members will not be tolerated and things such as that. I think that's very, very common in, all these public bodies. So, as I said, I would like to flesh it out a little bit more. And, I'd be glad to make suggestions or hear other people's point of view on it. But as I said, I would like to make those changes. The main one being the anonymity, the other one being that the board itself has a little more discretion as to the time periods allowed. And let's hear what Rich has to say.
Two things. One is that Article 10 of the bylaws specify that a bylaw change needs to be voted on at 2 consecutive meetings. It's silent about policies. So unless anyone knows of somewhere where it says the policies needed to be voted on at 2 consecutive meetings, I would say the bylaws are silent on that, and therefore a policy could be approved at the same night it was brought up, an amendment. The second thing I'd like to say is that I disagree with the sign-up requirement for public comment. If something happened at the library today, I picked up a book at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. If something happened in that visit and I wanted to talk about it tonight, I see no reason why 24 hours ahead or whatever that I should have to sign up to have access to a meeting. I just don't understand the reason for or the need for signing up, to be honest with you.
Hold on. Noreen, why don't you're chair of the policy committee? Why don't we have Noreen respond, Phil, and then I think Marcia. And please give Noreen a chance to respond between speakers and mute your line when you're not speaking.
Thank you. Sorry, Phil. This is just really quickly. In response to Barbara, we looked at different public library public comments, and they fall across the spectrum. Some require sign up, some don't, some are anonymous, some aren't. So it doesn't necessarily have to follow the school district the way the school board does it. Some are laborious, but what I see mostly from a couple of library public comment policies is that they're pretty simple and to the point. So the matter of it being anonymous or not is really up to the individual, I guess, library board. It doesn't necessarily have to adhere to a certain way. So I just wanted to put that in, and now if the others can talk. Thank
sure.
you.
Phil.
Actually, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, Marcia, you're on mute.
That's my opinion before, and my understanding is that the libraries individually can set their own policies. There's no hard and fast rule. As Noreen said, she had sent around an email which had a number of libraries, and they're all over the lot. Some require sign-in, some require sign-in just for the purpose of setting up the order on which people speak, but they do not have to give their names. They can be absolutely anonymous. Some are silent, and I read that to mean that it is not a requirement that they give their names. We don't have a requirement for residency or domicile or taxpayers. They don't have to own property. The public comment, as far as I'm concerned, is exactly that. We need to hear from the public as to what they think about the library. What people have to say, in my view, is more important than who they are. Some people may have personal reasons for not wanting to give their names out. They may be employees, they may be former employees, they may be former board members or former patrons. There are lots of reasons that people don't want to give out their names. As I said, I think what people need to say and want to say, they should be able to say without having to divulge who they are. I don't understand why we need to have people say who they are and identify themselves if they have a comment. In terms of abusive language or foul language, that can happen whether somebody gives their name or doesn't give their name, and the president of the board can certainly cut them off. I don't believe we should be putting barriers up for people speaking their minds, and I feel very strongly about not having people have to identify themselves.
Noreen, if that's all, Noreen, did you want to respond?
No, to a question, something that also Barbara said. I vacillated, this is me personally, I vacillated between 30 minutes and 20 minutes. And if you look at, if a speaker gets 3 minutes each, if you look at 30 minutes, it's basically, you can have up to 10 speakers and commentators. It doesn't happen often. I know it did happen, but it would give people more chances. We would see the spectrum of people giving their comments if they're 10, as opposed, I think if you cut it to 20, then you're looking at about 5 or 6 people. So that's something else to consider as to why 30 minutes as opposed to 20.
Would it make more sense to limit the time per speaker so that everyone who attends has some chance to be heard rather than put a total cap on time? Was there a reason that you went for a total amount of time rather than per speaker?
Personally, when I was looking at the different public comment policies, I saw that they all had a limit, and I do think that there should be a limit in terms, because if you get 100 people commenting, it's not so much that I wouldn't want to hear it, and I'm only speaking for myself. I can't speak for everybody, but we need to also run a meeting efficiently. So you could make that call, like, you know, let's say suddenly you get so many speakers. Well, we can decide, okay, at the end we have 15 minutes, and do we also want to add more to that time, like someone suggested? If you put so many speakers in the beginning, you kind of get lost after a while of what we were there for.
Is there a limit for individual speakers, so that way, you know, it's not one person for 20 minutes?
3 minutes.
Okay, yeah,
3
thank
minutes.
you.
Yes.
Herb.
Yeah, at the planning board, there are speakers. When we have public hearings, people are allowed to call in, and before COVID, they came to the meetings, and they always are required to identify themselves, but there is no time limit on how long these hearings can go on. We had a hearing on the cross gates that, you know, went for 93 people spoke on that, in addition to people who were emailing in. So there is no limit on the time. You know, at the planning board, I do believe that for the library also, that if anyone wants to speak on an issue, they should identify themselves. That way we know if they're some sort of if they're a stakeholder, or if they're just someone who feels like he or she wants to come to a meeting and bloviate. So, you know, and that is more common at meetings where people don't have to identify themselves. If they don't have to take responsibility for their comments, you know, they can say all sorts of absurd things.
Good point. Yes, Marcia. And then you're on mute, and then we'll jump to Barbara.
This is not a hearing. It's not a regulatory meeting. No one has to be under oath. It's a public forum. It's very different from a town board meeting or a hearing. so that I don't think it's in the same category. As far as bloviating or bad language or irrelevancies, that's up to the president to cut a person off, and that happens whether a person identifies themselves or not. So my view is public comment is public comment. And my view is to allow for an expansion of people's ideas. And what they have to say sometimes is more valid than who is saying it. So I err on the side of an open forum for folks to give us their opinions and their views.
All right, so we've got Barbara, Richard, Phil, and then we could discuss this and debate this all night. So I may suggest at some point during this discussion, we do a straw poll, have each board member say, I would vote in favor of this as it stands, or they suggest, I am not in favor of this policy. Here's what has to change for me to pass it. And so the policy committee knows what it needs to do and present at the next board meeting. And so just think on that as we continue the discussion. So Barbara, Richard, Phil.
Okay, a couple of things. As I said, we are an elected body. Bethlehem Public Library, I believe, does have a sign up for the comment period. The town board, the Albany County Board, it differs if you are an appointed board, say a town appointed board, you're not elected. As an elected board, the rules are a little bit different. As I said, I've watched a lot of town board meetings. I've watched some of the Albany County meetings. They all require, the school board meetings require that you identify yourself. Prior to COVID, anybody that came before our board was physically present, identified themselves. I just don't understand the anonymity portion of this whole thing. So again, we are an elected board, and if you have something to say, we welcome it, we encourage it. For years and years, we've always, as I said, had people come before the board, but they always identify themselves. It doesn't prohibit them from coming. It doesn't put hamstrings on them. And I think it's important to do that. To me, it's also important that, you know, you have the time limits. I can understand what Noreen is saying about maybe going, or maybe I'd go between 20 and 30 to 25, but I see what you're saying. But again, that we should have in the policy, the fact that the board can override that time limit if there is, you know, a big outpouring of people that want to talk. So again, you know, there should be a little bit more board involvement in the policy, you know, before I can support it. But thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Richard, and then Phil.
Just first, hopefully a quick point of order based on my previous comment. Does anyone have any reference other than precedent for why a policy needs to be voted on at 2 consecutive meetings?
Yes, it is in the bylaws, and it is in Article 7, Section 1E. All policy changes must be given to all trustees by mail or in person 30 days before any action can be by the full board can be taken.
Thank you. Hence the problems with our current bylaws, because the amendments are Section 10. So thank you for pointing that out. As for the issue of identifying yourself, I'm very torn on this. As I let Noreen know earlier, I could not make the last policy committee meeting for situational reasons. Marcia, I fully agree with you that we want to hear from people, but I also think that in my mind, philosophically, I want to give more stock to somebody that's paying the bills of the library than I do to somebody who's not. And the primary reason I'd like to know where someone is from, I don't even care so much about who they are, is to know whether they're paying the bill for what we're doing. And in my mind, those who are paying for our services should have a little bit higher influence in when we listen to them. So that's my thought. I can go either way, but that's my thought, and that's what it comes down to after a lot of thinking on this issue for me.
Thank you, Richard. Phil, and then I would like to respond.
Okay. From what I understand, there are some boards where there would be a sign-up process for public comment, not necessarily some long time in advance, just prior to the meeting, where a clerk or someone else would be taking their name down. That being said, there doesn't end up being, that does determine who gets to talk when, but it doesn't end up requiring them to identify themselves in the meeting. In a scenario where that makes sense is when somebody is, for example, a survivor of domestic violence and does not want to have their name on record searchable because they were in the minutes of a board meeting. They want to remain anonymous in that sense, but they could still be signed up with the clerk and identified as, if we wanted to, identified as somebody who would be, a resident of Guilderland or within the Upper Hudson Library System, which would be two real qualifications that make them somebody that we know participates in funding us in some way. But I strongly believe that while we don't necessarily want onslaught of people with some agenda that aren't really involved in our library, that's not something we've ever had to deal with. I don't anticipate we're going to be, inundated with people with some kind of an agenda that aren't residents. And I would rather err on the side of protecting someone's anonymity in a case where that might be very important to them and we'd be silencing them otherwise.
Thank you, Phil. And to think about the taxpayer as, needing to hear their voice more than others, while there's some merit in that, Richard, yourself earlier in the discussion said, you came at 5 o'clock and picked up a book, had there been an issue and you wanted to speak at the beginning, to have advanced sign up well in advance, would hinder you from speaking if that were the case. But also, if there was a residency requirement for speaking, someone would be required to check that before the board meeting, before allowing anyone to speak. And I'm just concerned that might either prohibit someone, from having the ability to speak because they didn't have enough time for someone to check the requirement, or as well as whose job would that be to check the residency required? It would need a clerk to be identified.
Caitlin, if I may, I'm not suggesting anything that formal.
Okay.
Just, if somebody says that I am a resident of the town of Guilderland, I'm not suggesting that we establish, a triplicate form system here.
Even allowed, you cannot have a residency requirement as a public body.
That's right.
Okay, so that we don't have to continue to discuss that point. So if I may, for the sake of time of the meeting, quick straw poll, I would vote for this as it stands. I would not. And very briefly, I'm talking 30 seconds, what specific item you'd like the policy committee to address in some way, to represent if that's required. Are there any objections to that procedure? None? Okay. Barbara.
The anonymity piece, the portion that deals with I would like to see a portion here to expand the time if there is a large outpouring of the public. And also the fact that the board would have the discretion, to override the presiding officer if for some reason there was a tension between the presenter and the presiding officer and the board wanted to hear the statement. Those were the main things that I saw. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
I would vote for it.
Thank you, Phil. Peter? Peter, did you want to weigh in?
Can you hear me?
Just very, very faintly, barely. Thank you, Peter. Marcia. I'm sorry, You're on mute. But you would, as it stands?
Yeah, as is.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the policy as it stands right now.
Okay, thanks. Herb?
I agree with Barbara's comments. I have the same concerns on this that she does.
Thank you. Noreen?
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay, Richard?
I can support it in its current form. I still come down that I would like people to just say where they're from. I'm very sensitive to, I'm sorry, I know it's a straw poll and I'll be done in just a second, but the domestic abuse issue and some other confidentiality things, I appreciate my colleagues pointing out to me. So I can support it in its current form. And I think we need to start somewhere and see what works. And if it doesn't, we can tweak it.
Thank you, Richard. I would take the recommendation of the policy committee if this is what they've presented. I trust that they've done their due diligence and researched and worked with multiple outlets. That's, if they've done the work and this is what they're presenting, I'm happy to accept it as it is.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you are
call
up,
on me,
Jason.
Caitlin.
You're next.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, sorry. No, we've been going in the same order all night. And so, yeah, no.
It sounded like you were closing. I apologize for interrupting.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, as far as domestic violence, like, I don't know why that would be a hindrance. I know for a fact that, like, it doesn't prevent anyone from registering to vote. I don't know why we would look for unique circumstances to say that, like, someone can just come out of nowhere from any, like, walk of life, from anywhere, not even a part of our community, Canada, wherever, and just say, oh, I'm going to just say something in this meeting. It seems like it's a waste of everyone's time. But I already kind of reiterated that during the policy meeting, that I don't feel comfortable with the anonymity or the whole anonymous thing being in there. So it'd be hard for me to vote on this.
Thank you, Jason. So policy committee, thank you. It looks like if we were to vote on this policy as presented, it would not pass. So there's a little bit more work to do. Perhaps some sort of compromise could be reached to say not anonymous, but whatever the other. I think that's the biggest hang up that people are having.
I'm sorry, I think I heard enough people say that they were okay with it in the end.
I see Barbara's not, Phil, Marcia, Kathy, Noreen, myself, and we got no comment from Peter. So we're pretty split, 50-50. You would vote in favor.
I would vote in favor at this point.
Okay. So it looks like with all the board members present, if this policy were to be put forward to a resolution tonight, it would pass as is.
And I'd just like a clarification for the minutes, and I'm sorry I'm on this minor point, but it doesn't require 2 board meetings. It just requires it to be in your hands 30 days before.
Correct.
So, yeah, just so we know that going forward.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I think Peter's come off of mute, and then I see Phil's hand. Peter?
No, I was just going to say maybe we should just take a vote on this,
We have to wait the 30 days.
That's right. I apologize.
Nope, that's okay. I would have loved to as well. So Phil?
I think if we're looking at pretty much everybody here and it's split 6-5, maybe we should try to put a little bit more work into it and see if we can get more people on board with the policy we put out.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Policy committee.
Can I just make one quick comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to say, because I don't know how much longer I'll be able to stay on tonight, and I know Richard just said something similar to that. This, by far, has been, and it's not really related to this, but one of the better meetings that we've had. And it's nice to see the amount of votes where it's unanimous and that we're working together. And this is what the community needs to see. This is what all the employees at the library need to see. And I think it's a great start.
Thank you, Peter. So I do want to keep us on the agenda. We are very much behind, but perhaps Peter, you and I can speak after the meeting in the next few days and catch up and talk about more about what's going well. Thanks. So Noreen, you more policy committee things, telecommuting.
I am really sorry to say this, and I'm embarrassed, but I've been so inundated with bylaws and this and so many other personal things that I had to work on this week that poof went telecommuting from my mind. So I'm really honest. I'm sorry. I know we talked about it, but for the life of me, I can't give you the details. If someone can save me.
Tim can speak on this.
Thank you, Tim.
So we drafted a policy. We had Chris Lanchanton review it. She sent it to the two CSEA labor relations specialists. We thought we had ironed out a policy, and then during a meeting of the COVID Action Committee, I learned, which was on Monday, I learned that the union still has 3 or 4 questions about it. Chris Lanchanton does note that CSEA approval is not necessary, that a policy could be passed without that. But I did speak with you, Caitlin, last night, I think, in preparation for the meeting. And we decided that since it does not have to be passed until March 21st, we would try to find out what CSEA's concerns are, perhaps as part of an upcoming labor management meeting, and see if those concerns can be incorporated. So we should prepare to have a telecommunications policy by March 21st. And as I'm following the discussion about the other policy, it means that we need to have it completed 30 days before March 21st in order to vote on it the 21st, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we need to by February 21st. I guess, or before that, I don't know what 30 days is, whatever 30 days before the March 21st meeting, all of the trustees need to have that presented to them.
Right.
So.
Wait, can I say something?
Yes, please, Jenna.
Hi, I think the next meeting is on March 18th.
Not a Sunday.
Oh, what?
The 21st is a Sunday.
No, I know, but our next meeting is on March 18th.
Okay.
Right, that makes more sense.
Okay, so we're looking at March 18th. Sorry. So we, within the next week, this has to get looked at, concerns addressed if they're going to be addressed, and then presented to the board. And Phil says by Monday. So thank you for counting 30 days. So, if this is going to happen, Tim, it has got to happen quickly. It may not be a full meeting of the Labor Management Committee, and it might not be a negotiation. They just may have questions that maybe need addressing. I don't know how deep the issue goes, but I think that that can certainly be handled by Monday, presented to the board so it can be voted on March 21st. And Phil, you are on the COVID Action Committee. So this is having a telecommuting policy is a requirement?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a requirement that we have one in place, but the pandemic operations plan references that we will follow that policy. But we are not going to include the policy in the plan.
Understood. So if we want that plan to be, in fact, accurate, we have to have a telecommuting policy. So, okay, thank you.
All right.
Noreen, are you all set with your policy committee update?
Yes, and thank you everyone for your input. We're definitely going to look at everyone's, advice and comments and what they wish for. So we'll go back to the drawing board.
Thank you. So Phil, for the COVID Action Committee.
All right. So we had 2 meetings on the 8th and then whatever was a week before that. No, we have on the 8th and whatever was a week before that, I guess the 1st. And I'll try to be brief. In the first meeting, we talked over staff concerns. Following that, we discussed the reopening plan as it exists and some of the shortfalls in that. And lastly, we focused on the pandemic operations plan, which is something the state requires us to have submitted to them by April 1st, which means by Monday, since I don't see it in this meeting and we had a couple little tweaks to do, by Monday, we should have a draft of that emailed out to everybody on the board. So we have 30 days to look at it so that we can vote on it. The second meeting was essentially focused on that plan. What we did is we took the plan that Albany had in place, the version of that Margaret took and modified to fit better with GPL, and we talked through some of the items on there. And I think we landed on something that does the job for the state and takes into account most of the concerns that we have specific to Guilderland, with the caveat that obviously the telecommuting policy becomes very important here and it will be referenced, but its details aren't going into the document. The document can be approved while we're still fighting over that other policy, and it will be referenced separately. And that is probably all I want to say about that, because mostly I hope that we can get this document to you all very soon and that everybody can read through this craziness. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about it as soon as possible.
Thanks, Phil. Tim?
I just want to point out that in addition to the tight time frame here, Monday is a holiday. So I think it's unlikely that we're going to get either of these things done by Monday. We'll certainly try tomorrow with the telecommute policy. But I was asked earlier by Margaret, actually earlier in the week, to find out what happens if we don't have our pandemic operation plan filed by April 1st with the state. I did ask the Upper Hudson Library System about that, and they basically said, well, you know, the pandemic operations plan police are not going to come to your door on April 1st. So if it takes another month, it takes another month would be my personal read of it. Unless you think I'm derelict in my duty, we'll try tomorrow, but seems unlikely that both of those will get resolved really tomorrow because Monday's a holiday.
Phil.
Is the pandemic operation plan technically considered a policy, or is this just a document we're required to present to the state for the library?
Good observation. It's just a requirement, although it requires a board vote.
But by the bylaws, does everything that requires a board vote need a 30-day? Okay, so
No.
what we might be able to do is still get this to you as soon as humanly possible, talk about it, potentially even tweak it in advance of the March meeting, and then hopefully get to somewhere that enough people are happy with so that we can get this document voted on in March and presented to the state in time.
That sounds great. Tim, just to cover ourselves, by Monday, whatever work you can get done tomorrow with the union, and let them know if they want their concerns addressed, it needs to be done tomorrow, that this policy is going to be presented to the board in writing. Send it to us in its form, whatever you can get done, so we have the option of passing it or not, should we need to, just to play it safe. So, thank you. Marcia.
Just a quick comment. I just wanted to compliment Margaret on retrofitting a plan by the Albany Public Library to Guilderland needs, and I think Phil was probably going to say this as well, but she just did a terrific job in taking a look at the Albany Public Library, which didn't exactly fit our needs. They have branches and for a lot of other reasons. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Margaret.
I just want to thank you and say it helps not to have to reinvent the wheel.
So, all right. Thanks, everybody.
And I'll get it out to you guys tomorrow regardless. So then at least you'll have it. And then if the union concerns are something we can square away, you will have had it in your mailbox starting tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Tim. I think that'll cover our bases so it can be done. If it can be done, and if it can't be done, then we will at least have tried. So if there's nothing else from Phil, we'll move on to Herb for the Upper Hudson report.
Hey, excuse me. The board of the Upper Hudson Library System met yesterday, and coming up is Library Advocacy Day. They will be virtual meetings with legislators, and they've been scheduled by Tim Burke. The message would be about the importance of libraries, and we're interested in what libraries are going to do to get back to normal, and so we're asking for more money for libraries. And what Tim is doing is working through the directors. The directors are going to be recruiting people who will be going to the virtual meetings from their libraries with the various legislators who represent their districts. So Tim will be talking to people. I don't know if he wants staff or who he wants, at these meetings, but there'll be limited number of people, and the director will be responsible for, choosing those people. In the payroll protection program, UHLS applied for funding, and the application was accepted. Nothing's approved yet, but the application is for about $100,000. And those are loans that may or may not have to be paid back, having to do with personnel costs. In June, there's going to be a virtual celebration. There's going to be no dinner like there's been in many previous years, but there will be a virtual celebration. The date hasn't been established exactly yet, and there will be awards and speeches, and election of new trustees to the Upper Hudson Board will be done at that time virtually. The Capital District Library Council is a tenant of Upper Hudson, and they may be moving out. So there's a possible loss of $3,330 per month in rent. They are trying to make some sort of an agreement where if they don't need the space, they can rent a little bit of space in the Upper Hudson area and rent meeting rooms by the day that they need it. So that has not completely been worked out yet. There were no financial reports at the Upper Hudson meeting due to illness. There was a revised 2021 budget, and the governor's executive budget started with a 7.5% cut in state aid lines, including libraries. And that was revised from the anticipated 20% cut. So the budget was revised to include delivery services back at full service, 5 days a week, and all of the staff salaries will be restored back to January. They had been reduced because of the possible 20% cuts. Other aid lines were restored or partially restored, and the 2021 budget was approved. The 2020 budget had to be revised to include more monies from the state as the cutbacks were reduced. And there's one problem that they had with the Berlin Free Library. They did not complete their long-term plan, so they needed a variance from from Upper Hudson to continue working on that, and that was granted. And the meeting, which started at 4:30, then was adjourned at 5:42. Does anyone have any question or comments about this?
I see no hands being raised, Herb.
Okay, good.
Thank you so very much. Tim, the directors and department heads reports for January 2021.
I'll make it very fast. Our social media presence continues to grow. It's very well managed. Our librarians put together an excellent website page at the Guilderland website to help people get tax preparation resources because the AARP is not doing their tax assistance program for patrons this year. We just started the Print from Anywhere service. So far, it's going well. Our Sunday curbside hours, which started in early January, are still the only Sunday service anywhere in the Upper Hudson Library system, and they are rocking. People really appreciate that. Congrats to Maria Buell for getting a $750 grant from the state of New York to have Paul Grandal do a series of talks with patrons on 5 Pulitzer Prize winning novels. We had a very successful Broadway musicals trivia night. Our computer coaching service where volunteers help people with their computers continues. It can be done virtually over the phone. So 9 sessions were held in January. Librarian Elizabeth Smith made a really nice video on the GPL Kids and Families video page on how to make a snowman. It goes on with some of our crafting videos. There is a beautiful children's activity book that we're starting to give out, and you have a copy of that in your packet, and that's it.
Tim, do you have information on periodicals?
Yes, I didn't know if Richard was still with us, but Richard had asked me to do a little report on periodicals. Having looked at the circulation statistics, he noted that only 11 periodicals circulated in January. So typically periodicals are used much more often in-house than checking out, which Richard had kind of figured out, but wanted to confirm. To me, it's a very strange idea to check out an issue of a magazine, but some people do it. So it's always going to be a low circulation number. When the pandemic started, we were subscribing to 273 periodicals, which are magazines, newspapers, and a few newsletters and loose leaf services like investment services and so forth. Fairly immediately, Maria Buell and other librarians decided to downscale that to 26 magazines as a cost-cutting measure during the pandemic. And when we do reopen, we'll go back up to somewhere in between 26 and 273. But it's been a good short-term money saver. We are also growing quite a bit in our online use of periodicals, which is one reason why the new number, once we reopen, will probably be in between 273 and 26. People like to use them online. They're very easy to use. You get the experience of turning the pages just like you do with a magazine. And it's, they don't have to leave their house to do it. We currently offer over 3,000 electronic magazines on 2 different platforms, one called Flipster and the other one, the name of the other one escapes me, but because it's very new. But we have magazines in many different languages and so forth. We buy them as a package. So, there's really about 100 that people look at on a very, very frequent basis online. But when you buy those 100, you get 2,900 other ones that are handy for people. Particularly, as you may remember, I talk a lot about the fact that 58 different languages are spoken at home in the residences in Guilderland. So we do have a lot of foreign language titles for people online. Richard?
Richard, yeah.
Just one comment. The printed home service, the print service, I want to compliment whoever's had that idea and also for implementing it. It's one of the things that I never thought about that people don't have access to. And there are local businesses that charge for printing. So I think it's a great service. So I just want to compliment who's ever thought about it. The second thing is, and this is directed primarily toward Luann, is that I'm not sure that I have seen anything comprehensive about how to access magazines. And certainly with that many titles, you can't publish a list, but just if there was, I think we need another feature in something about magazines, unless we've published something recently. You know, with maybe the most popular titles, the 10 most popular titles that are accessed or something like that. So I leave it.
I see what you're saying, and I'll jump in. Like, we could do that in the press release or on social media. It is exceedingly easy from the front page of the website, but if you don't tell people that it's there, then they may not go do it.
Yeah, I just judge by what I'm comfortable with and know how to do, and you know, and I'm not. So.
Yep.
Thanks. That's all of that excellent to get an update on. Did anyone else have any questions, things for Tim on his director's report? Noreen.
Just really, really quick. I know you didn't mention it, Tim, but I just wanted to say thumbs up for the podcast.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mention the podcast, and in part that's because board meetings idealistically or ideologically cover the previous month, but this month we've launched a podcast, and librarian Kathleen, whose last name escapes me at the moment, but I'm sorry if she's listening, but she's the one who took the lead on that, and I believe we've had one episode. Kathleen Terrell is her name. Thank you. So it's a good new step. Did you listen, Noreen?
Yes, I did. And I was
Cool.
really happy. I have been already thinking for a while that a podcast would be great. And of course, your librarians came up with it. So looking forward to hearing more information from them and see how it grows.
Episode 2 is Life as a Board Member featuring Noreen Rivas.
No, very boring, guys. Very boring.
So is there a motion to accept the directors and department heads reports for January 2021? Richard, second by Marcia. Discussion? Nope. So roll call quickly. Barbara? Yes. Phil? Yes. Peter has left the meeting. Marcia?
Yes.
Yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Herb?
Yes.
Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Caitlin, yes. Jason?
Yes.
Outstanding, unanimous at 8:45. The motion to accept the directors and department heads reports for January 2021 passes. Old business committee assignments. So with Herb joining us and some resignations, we have updated the committee assignments. There's been some changes. Primarily, you'll see the audit committee has been removed from the list. It's not one of our mandatory standing committees as defined by our bylaws. So it's an ad hoc committee. And the finance or the audit passed and has been dealt with, and that committee can be reformed in the future when it's necessary. So Barbara.
Caitlin, again, you maybe would know better than I, but I thought that the state required us to have an audit committee.
Oh, well, gosh. Now, I didn't look at that.
Because we never had one, and then when we were audited and by maybe 2 or 3 auditing firms back, I think that's what we were told. But it's worth getting checked at least.
It is. So we can add that back. It seems like there is still an outstanding vacancy. So we can look into that. Are there any other questions? I didn't get any via email about this. Yes, Barbara.
Just, I'm wondering if Tony or Cole would know the answer to that right off the top of their heads, or do we need to research it?
I believe you're right. We do need an audit committee, and the members have to be, I think the chair of the committee has to be a non-board member and non-staff. That's why we had Alex and Neil on that committee. They have to be third party, basically. So I think that's correct. Tony, do you have any?
Yeah, I don't have anything that would challenge that.
Okay, unfortunately, when this went out last week, I didn't get that feedback in time to update this list to do that. But so it'll have to be done and then redone at the next board meeting again. In the meantime, so things can keep functioning, are there any other questions about the committees as presented?
Caitlin, I'm losing power on my phone, so I'm going to have to go. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Herb. Quick question. Are you okay? You are on the ad hoc steering committee for the expansion, and you'll continue to serve as the UHLS liaison.
Fine. Wherever you want to put me is fine.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you for joining us. Yes, Richard.
Caitlin, just to point out, the Labor Management Committee is no longer a standing committee. I know you've got the members on there, but the terms of that committee require one of the two, no more than two trustees, one of them being you.
Sorry, I got information that it was two trustees plus myself.
You know what? I'm not sure about. Yeah, we'd have to go back. I'd have to go back and look at Margaret's.
That's my recollection as well.
Two trustees plus
two plus myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
No more than two plus you, as I recall.
Yep. Margaret, did you care to weigh in?
That's correct, but I will double check the contract.
Okay, but that got reduced because it was found that that's actually a contractual obligation rather than something that's defined by our bylaws.
Right.
So, is there a motion to approve these as presented, knowing that we'll have to come back and take a look again? But we need committees to keep work going. Phil.
That's the motion.
Motion to approve, second by Marcia. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Barbara? Yes. Phil?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Herb is no longer with us at the meeting. Noreen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Kate, yes. And Jason?
Yes.
Excellent. Unanimous at 8:51. The motion to approve the committee assignments as presented passes. I would just ask that when I redo these again and send them out the week before the meeting with requests to, if anyone has any questions or concerns, to please do that before the meeting so it can be resolved, so we don't have to do this all of these times. Trustee vacancies. There is still one outstanding vacancy, and the board should decide to how that vacancy should be handled at the special board meeting. Some ideas were thrown around. I'm open to accept discussion or motions. If someone wants to just make a motion, we can certainly discuss it and then have a vote. Barbara.
I would just as soon leave it vacant for the 3 meetings that are going to occur before the board meeting, unless Chris tells us that we have to fill the vacancy. I don't see how we could actually do it properly in such a short time frame.
So is there a motion to leave the vacancy as is and to be filled at the next election?
I'll make that motion.
Jason makes the motion. Thank you, Jason. Is there a second? Marcia? Yes, Richard.
I just would ask if we're in violation of the bylaws for those 3 months. The bylaws say that the board is composed of 11 members.
Right. So the vacancy is always a no vote, right? So it will, and so I talked with Tim Burke on this and asked, and so let's say we have, we hold open applications for 30 days, right? So now we're in the middle of March, and then we have 2 weeks, and then it's April, then the nominating committee makes a decision, and then it's the April meeting before we're even, approving that nomination as a board. And then now we have May and June.
I don't disagree in any way. I think it's probably the right thing to do to leave it vacant. When I see it's not compliant with the bylaws, I just would never want anybody to come back and say anything.
Correct. And that was also my concern. And I know, we had discussion at the special board meeting, and that was sort of the consensus that folks were coming to, and the discussion was ended. If that's what the board votes on, because we could have a process and see how it goes if people felt strongly, but Marcia, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think Barbara prefaced her comments by saying we should talk to Chris. The timing of it mitigates against filling it, because by the time it gets filled, there's going to be a new election. But
let me, if I can, move the following: that we leave the board with 1 vacancy through the next election, pending the approval of discussion with Chris Lanchanton.
I'll second that.
Okay. So procedurally, I'm not sure how this goes. Richard, do we vote on, is yours an amendment to Barbara's motion that it's pending, the attorney's approval, or is it a separate motion?
Oh, I wasn't aware that Barbara made a motion.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
To that.
Yeah.
I just wonder if she would accept an amendment that with Chris's approval, with Chris's consensus.
Barbara, do you accept Richard's amendment to your motion that it remain vacant pending as long as the lawyer?
That was my motion, by the way.
Sorry, Jason, you're right. It was Jason's. I've got 4 notes here. Jason, do you accept the amendment?
No.
Okay.
What?
Jason does not accept the amendment that it's pending the attorney's approval, that we leave the vacancy. So we are strictly voting on, do we leave the vacancy, or do we not? Is there anyone who'd like to have discussion?
I'm just wondering, I'd just like to explore why Jason feels that way. It seems like we have something in our bylaws which has a requirement. It seems like we all want to do the same thing, but I do think we have to do due diligence and make sure that we're complying with the law.
Are you aware of any laws that we're breaking, Richard?
I'm aware that our bylaws say we have 11-member board.
Okay, and they're supposed to be voted on. I mean, like, we can do it by appointment, but it just seems like, why would you do that? Have someone be on the board for what, like a month, maybe, or for 1 meeting?
And I completely agree with you. I agree with the concept completely. But I think it shows due diligence on our part if we check with our attorney that if somebody comes back and say, why did you have 10 members? We said, this is the reason logistically, and our attorney gave their blessing.
Kathy.
I don't know if we can we vote just to have 10 members? Is that the vote? I mean, I think I agree with Richard that we should have it a caveat that we have to make sure that what we're doing complies with our bylaws, and that it's okay. I mean, I don't know if we can just simply vote, say, well, we're gonna
We discussed this. We discussed this in the policy meeting, as Richard and Marcia remember, and we were talking about like how long it would be, like, you know, if we had to fill vacancies and, like, you know, the whole appointment thing. And at the time, you seemed to be okay with, you know, having a, like, you know, extended period. But and now, you know, when we're talking like, you know, a few months, you're saying, okay, let's you know, try and fill a vacancy. I know you're saying.
Who are you directing that to?
I know you're saying look into the legality of it, you know.
No,
so I just
don't fill it at all. I'm saying just make sure our attorney is okay with what we want to do.
So I think that, Jason, the general consensus is that it would be a futile exercise to try and fill the board vacancy. Now, Kathy, that's not saying we're voting on having a 10-member board. We still require 6 as a quorum. We still require 6 on motions for approval, even though we're operating with 10 people. Right. So there's, you know, automatically always sort of something that we're up against. Now, weighing that, and then, you know, I agree with the motion and the spirit of the motion that, in fact, you know, it's not, it's sort of prohibitive, the short a period of time that we have before the election compared to the amount of effort and time it would take to go through the process. I believe Richard's amendment is simply meant to cover us, you know, from any sort of legal action. That he's not necessarily opposed to the motion and the spirit of it. Just we should do our due diligence. Barbara.
I understand. It's still a no for me.
Caitlin, you spoke with Tim Burke, you said, right? So this is not an unusual circumstance, and common sense, I think, here should rule. But what did Tim Burke tell you? That it certainly is legal, because I know it's been done before. I know it's been done on the school board, as we've even done it as a library board when it's this close to an election. So, you know, as I said, sometimes common sense just has to rule.
Can I just ask the harm in asking Chris for her opinion? Is there a harm here that I'm missing when we have a retained attorney?
I believe, Jason, that would be directed at you, since you did not approve.
Oh,
Barbara as well.
Apologies. I thought he was just putting that out broadly. I don't have any issue with it. I'm just saying, for me, it's a no. Like, you know, procedurally, like, you know, if I made the motion, I don't want the amendment to, you know, so I'm just saying no. That's my personal belief, or, you know, the way I'm going to view this. You know, there's nothing else to it.
I don't understand.
So Marcia and Phil, I believe you also wanted to speak at some point. So Marcia and then Phil.
Yeah, I mean, very briefly, Barbara's suggestion and Richard's motion are about the same. We have a requirement in the bylaws that we have an 11-member board. The bylaws also have a provision for filling a vacancy. And so, because of the closeness of the next election, it doesn't make practical sense to try to fill that vacancy. However, because there is a mechanism to fill a vacancy, I think we'd be on solid ground, simply checking with Chris to make sure that we are on solid ground and leaving the vacancy open.
Respectfully, Marcia.
It's just that
respectfully,
simple.
Marcia, for me, the reason I'm saying it was a no for me is because I don't think it's necessary. It's not like this is something that's unusual. This happens all the time, and then you just fill the. So it's not like, if we're gonna fill the vacancy, we're gonna fill the vacancy. I'm not, that attached to this, but my point is that there's no reason to look into this. This isn't unusual. This happens all the time.
I don't disagree that it's not unusual. I think out of an abundance of caution, the proposition was to just check quickly with Chris Lanchin. I don't see the harm in it, and I think it protects us. But, I understand where you're coming from, Jason, and if you feel that strongly about it, you do. But what is the harm in asking her? Do you think that it's something extraordinary that we would ask our outside counsel for advice?
If you feel that strongly, Marcia, I mean, sure. If this is something that, I don't know why it's necessary. I just don't understand why we're dragging this out. We were almost done, but if this is something that you got, because it's not that it's not important to me, but it just doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
So Phil and then Noreen.
Yeah, we always operate with vacancies. If somebody leaves the board, if somebody moves out of town, at least for a time period. And from what I understand, the bylaws just say that we will appoint without necessarily telling us how to do it. I see no reason with the way that we're filling the seat is we're letting the public know that there is an available slot when the election comes up in a couple of months and encouraging them to fill it. I don't think we necessarily have to, I don't think there's any legal concern, just like whenever somebody leaves the board, there's no concern like, well, what do we do to this meeting if we've only got 10 people coming into this meeting or 9 people coming into this meeting? That there's no logistical way for us to get somebody to fill in for a couple of months for us here in any reasonable way. I think if we're going to take any action at all, it might as well just be putting an article in the Altamont Enterprise saying, by the way, we've got 3 seats coming up or whatever it is. We'd really like people to come, and here's why it's awesome.
Noreen, did you want to?
Yeah, I don't know if this is neither here nor there, but I was wondering also if our absolute charter takes precedent in times like these over our bylaws. I'm just seeing that it says the library should be administered by a board not fewer than 5, no more than 11 trustees. So right now we have 10. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in that I was looking at the charter.
Barbara.
We're making a mountain out of a molehill. So many of us have been on the board with vacancies, and this has been a common practice. Nobody has ever been concerned about we have to have 11 people here. I mean, this is not a first-time event. Why we're getting so awfully technical, all we're saying is that we're going to leave the vacancy filled for the next couple of months. And I don't even know if we need to have a vote on that, to be perfectly honest with you. But, as I said, common sense rules and practical experience rules. We've done this before. We've done this, golly, I can't remember, at least 8 or 9 times since I've been on the board. And there's never been these technical issues of we have to have 11 people here all the time. And it just has never been of any concern. And who in the public, I can't imagine, is going to be writing letters to the editor or complaining that we haven't fulfilled our duty. I mean, we have done the best that we can with the vacancies that we had. The time frame now is much too short to expand the search and to do a proper search. There's an election coming up. As soon as that election is done, that person immediately takes office at the next board meeting and is sworn in. There was just no need for all this technicality. And as I said, sometime common sense and experience just has to, come to the forefront.
All right, folks. Seems like there's been some discussion. Unfortunately, Richard is not in the meeting anymore. As he previously said, he was likely going to have to leave. And so Jason has made a motion to leave the vacancy as is to be filled in the next public election. Would anyone be opposed to just voting on that now? No. Okay. So I am in favor. Kathy?
I'm in favor.
Barbara? Yes. Marcia?
Yes.
Noreen?
Abstain.
Phil?
In favor.
Jason?
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 abstention. The motion passes at 9:08 p.m. to leave the remaining vacancy until the next election. New business. Is there any? Tim? No from Tim. All right, no new business. Jenna, can
Yes.
we approve the minutes of the regular board meeting with the folks we have now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting? Marcia, second by Barbara. I think I can see everyone except for Jason. So all in favor? Aye. Jason? Just give me a yes, please. Jay, you got to vote, or it doesn't pass.
I'm trying. All right, here I am.
Sorry,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
there
I'm
you go.
sorry.
Yes, okay, unanimous at 9:09 p.m. That minutes of the regular board meeting. The minutes of the special board meeting from February 1st. Barbara, second by Phil. Jenna, is anyone abstaining? Jason is abstaining.
Yeah, Jason, but the others left, so just Jason.
Okay, and then I think that does
Wait, no,
leave
I'm
us.
not abstaining. I just I'm
you can't
having
vote.
technical difficulties.
No, that's okay. You can't vote. You weren't at the special board meeting.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
But
Apologize.
there is 6. I was mistaken. You were the 7th vote before. So all in favor. See everybody's hands for the record. So that passes unanimously at 9:10 p.m. Luann, public input.
I don't have any.
Excellent. Is there any other motion?
Adjourn.
Marcia makes a motion to
I'll
adjourn.
second that.
Second by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone, so very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Jason.
Bye.